Hi, Raghav. Good to see you again. Yeah, and so maybe a good place to begin is just to let us know how you ended up in New Haven and why you got so interested in and passionate about aging science.
Yeah, for sure. Prior to New Haven, I was building a computational biology startup, and I was really excited about sort of cancer uh,
Mhm.
and sort of building therapeutics for cancer. It was kind of a chance encounter with my mentor, Dr. Morgan Levine.
Mhm.
I was attending one of her talks, and she was like, "Well, if you got to solve cancer or any other aging-related disease, why don't solve aging itself?" Right?
Mm.
And that kind of struck with me, struck a huge chord, and that's kind of what started me on the path of studying aging and aging biomarkers and how we can really sort of solve the root cause of our ill health in some ways, which is sort of aging
Mhm.
altogether.
Mhm. That's super cool. Morgan Levine. Surprising that she would try to get you involved in the aging field. um, yeah, that's a bit of a joke. Um, so
Yeah.
recently you described a really phenomenal study in Nature Aging on really sort of integrating signals from multiple organ systems into this coherent multi-organ measure of aging. I think you call it symphony age or true diagnostic. Could you describe a little bit of that for us and why you think it's such a cool new innovation?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the idea kind of stems from the fact that we need sort of measures of aging, right? If you can't quantify it, you can't treat it, you can't resolve it, right? So you need measures of aging. And it's not like we don't have measures of aging. We have sort of frailty measures, we have sort of epigenetic clocks that kind of measure whole body aging.
Yeah.
But when you start sort of working towards translating this to clinic, right, a physician doesn't see sort of, if you think about physicians, right, you don't have like a whole body aging physician, I guess, other than a general practitioner. How physicians divide the body is in different sort of organs and different systems.
Yeah.
And that kind of sort of led us, that was kind of our inspiration that if we need to translate these biomarkers to clinic, we really need to sort of divide them up into what a physician would be able to interpret them as.
Yeah.
And that kind of led to the idea of systems age or symphony age, which is, can we quantify ages in different biological systems, in different organs of our body from a single blood draw? Essentially,
Mhm.
right now, if you have to do that, you'd probably have to get like probably 20 different blood draws done for 100 different biomarkers. But can you sort of remove all of that aspect, that cost, and that excessive amount of blood drawn, and just do it from a single blood draw and be able to quantify aging in different organs?
Yeah, I think the actionable opportunity here is huge. And I just love the idea that you call it symphony
Yeah,
because symphony sort of suggests that there's multiple players and they're all working together to build something very beautiful. And every now and then, a rookie trombonist or something is off tune,
yeah,
and that discord can amplify through the whole orchestra, I
yeah,
suppose, the whole
yeah.
symphony.
No,
And
that's exactly true. I think it's like kind of like an organization of all our organs and systems, right? And if something goes off, your whole body is out of place.
Mhm.
I personally love the name Symphony Age.
Yeah, I love it too. And was it Vivaldi Four Seasons, or we could go even deeper, in terms of the analogy. But I would like to ask, so much of geroscience has been sort of for the rich and the famous
Mm,
and the theoretical, I guess. And what really excites me about your work and the work of your colleagues is that in a way it's kind of democratizing geroscience. It's saying let's use sort of precision approaches to and measure multiple organ systems to find out what's unique about you as an individual and the life histories that you may have had and the allostasis, the burdens you may have accumulated and experienced over your life course that affect your heart or that affect your liver. and how to use that. And that's driving your accelerated aging. And
Yeah,
so bringing this to people with their very heterogeneous backgrounds, I
yeah.
think is a lovely thing. Is that the plan? Is that part of this inspiration for this sort of the precision neuroscience and democratize?
For sure. So I think the precision geroscience is kind of the core of it, right? Be able to understand sort of the organ level aging patterns. But the cost is also a very important factor here, as you said, right? The current way sort of a lot of longevity clinics and a lot of sort of longevity medicine works is sort of this high throughput of data, these large omic data sets that they generate for their patients, which is often not quite affordable. Like if you think about it, like something like a Grail test costs $1,000. That's just not affordable for someone who's trying to do this on a daily sort of yearly basis, right, in the general population. And so the cost is really interesting. Now you can get this test, and essentially an epigenetic blood draw can cost as cheap as $60,
Mm,
which is something that is very, very affordable, in my opinion, at least in the American context. And hopefully, as the prices of epigenetic tests go down, this would be affordable across the globe, in my opinion.
mhm,
Uh, and what's really exciting is that we've not just thought about it from, hey, this is just a diagnostic. We see this as something that can actually be used for interventional purposes. So we have actually done a study now where we look at not just these 11 biomarkers for different organs, but actually look at 50 different interventions, anywhere from like lifestyle interventions like diets, right down to pharmacological interventions, and see which of them are specifically intervening with which particular organ system. So is metformin sort of intervening with all systems? Is Mediterranean diet really helpful for metabolic aging?
mhm,
And that way you can actually sort of see a real-time translation of this, right? Which is now you have an accelerated aging in your heart, right? What intervention, what cheap intervention, right? Metformin at the cost of it is really cheap, or even doing Mediterranean diet is really cheap. Can someone practice to really slow that aging down?
mhm. When you think about, the sort of the clinical, I guess, implementation of this, you would imagine that the sooner you know that a treatment is improving conditions or not, the better.
Yeah.
And so I would wonder, with Symphony Age, are you planning to to multiplex it with proteomics or other circulating factors to figure out what is the shortest amount of time before you can find out whether some intervention like you mentioned tame or metformin
Yeah.
is having the desired outcome?
Yeah. So what we have done is, we are looking at a lot of interventional data that has epigenetics in it, right? And so we can then say which of these interventions are decreasing these particular clocks or these biomarkers. But at
Mhm.
the same time, as you pointed out, sort of additional readouts provide additional information.
Right.
And but it still remains the cost effect, right? So doing proteomics for an individual is fairly challenging. But what if we could predict proteins using just epigenetics, right?
Mm. Nice.
That is something that is very much possible. So we have been able to sort of predict proteomic values or even metabolite values
Mm.
directly from epigenetics. So again, from that simple $60 test, you could not just know that your heart aging is really high, but your troponin levels are also really high. And that is probably somehow, and your cholesterol is probably really high. Again, from the same singular test. And
Mm.
that is really insightful, because now you can go from all the way from saying like my heart aging is really high down to saying like why it might be really high, because these
Mhm.
certain proteins and metabolites are upregulated as predicted by epigenetics.
That's really, really very interesting because it sort of suggests that epigenetics is constantly being remodeled and sampling the organ sort of homeostasis and giving you a real time readout. And that sort of raises the question about the connection between the epigenetic signatures and potential function because of this constant remodeling in response to perturbations in the environment, drug treatments, experiences, exposures, and then the epigenetics are remodeled, that can't be too far from function. So I wonder, with some of these approaches that you're developing, there are proxies that you can use to measure aging in different organs and more holistically, but there are also maybe links to function and that might inform the pathways that some of these interventions are actually acting upon. Is that
Absolutely.
what you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think not only are we sort of at the age where these biomarkers could be used, as you said, in a clinical setting to discover, but I believe that they could be potentially even clear drug targets within the ways these biomarkers are capturing sort of the information.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we haven't quite explored that to the maximal extent, but I do believe that the fact that we are able to capture these changes quite acutely indicates to the fact that there is a mechanistic understanding that maybe we will figure out in the forthcoming years. Just
Yeah, second generation Symphony 2.0 or 3.0.
yeah, for sure.
And it takes a village, right?
Yeah.
This opportunity for collaborations. I'm just thinking about the, there's so much interest now in not necessarily, well, not only treating pathogenesis
Hmm.
to attenuate the bad, but also to recognize the good
Yeah.
and the resilient and the the circumstances that may allow you to avoid some sort of decline. And so I'm wondering, do you think that there's an opportunity here for identifying persons or homeostatic signatures that predict resilience, that predict protectiveness, that predict responders versus non-responders and people's outcomes in response to like infections, vaccinations, heart attacks, etc.
Yeah, for sure. So even with systems age, we have sort of used some of that knowledge from our different sort of systems to predict what interventions might work or not work for certain individuals, right? But I think more interestingly, what you're pointing out about is resilience, right? And I think that's a separate project altogether. We're trying to actually use epigenetics to predict resilience, right? So till now, in some ways, a lot of these predictors predict damage, right? That
Right.
how much damage has happened. But resilience, one can argue, is almost another dimension, right? Which might be completely separate from damage. And so I think there is a huge scope to sort of build those predictors and then for example even understand how we are predicting those and find potential drug targets to
Mhm.
enhance resilience.
Hmm. You can think of like, flavors of it too: cognitive resilience, physical
Yeah, of
resilience.
course. Yeah,
You
for sure.
Yeah, so lots to do there. I'm thinking also about in terms of the sequela
Hmm.
of aging and the opportunity to sample different organs using your sort of holistic approach. If the accelerated aging occurs first in the liver, it may set off a chain of reactions that lead to a loss in homeostasis between organ crosstalk.
Yeah.
And so, in a way, it seems like you would be able to track either the radiation and amplification of a movement away from homeostasis or the ability to adaptively respond and maintain homeostasis despite some sort of perturbation or sort of burdensome exposure. And so this it seems like this is an opportunity to understand the whole pathogenesis and this sort of the unfolding of a pathogenic phenotype by
Yeah. So
multiple organs.
actually, that's a very interesting question. We see this as kind of, as you pointed out, kind of like a domino effect that happens with
Yeah,
systems,
yeah.
right? So when one falls, which of the others will follow? And it's interesting because in our paper, what we did was something similar on the lines. What we found were clusters of individuals, right, uh,
Mhm.
that were aging on similar. Sort of similar dimensions in the sense that, for example, if their cardiovascular age was high, their lung age was also very high, right? Or if their metabolic age was high, their inflammatory age was also really high. Things that you would see sort of correlating with each other already, because we know, for example, metabolic and inflammation goes hand in hand. But you see that in a really nice trend where you can see, like, okay, some individuals are first high on metabolic aging, followed by a couple of years down the line, their inflammation goes up as well. Uh,
Mm,
and that kind of domino effect is quite beautiful to see. And that's what we call almost like aging trajectories, right?
mm.
How are people diverging from a general health into a bad sort of aging dimension, eventually leading to some kind of a disease, age related disease?
That's fascinating because it reminds me when you talk about sort of the trajectory of a person with sort of disease burden and how it becomes multimorbidity,
Yeah.
and maybe aging is a multimorbid scenario. It reminds me of Waddington, one of the first persons who
Mhm.
described epigenesis and
Yeah.
epistasis,
Yeah.
and epigenetics, and the commitment of cell lineages based on their environmental cues. And so this is sort of a revisiting of that whole paradigm, but really giving it some more teeth. And
Yeah.
that's I think that's just really beautiful.
Yeah. I agree.
I'm wondering about mind body, because that when we talk about holistic, you can have a person who's physically younger than the predicted age,
Hmm.
the chronological age, but depressed,
Hmm.
suicidal, traumatized, and that will have ramifications for their health outcomes in the future. And so do, is do you imagine that some of these sort of holistic approaches, integrative approaches, will be able to inform sort of mind body interactions, the gut brain axis,
Yeah.
stress and its a role in inflammation, inflammation's role in organ function, etc.
Yeah. No, I think it's really powerful actually, because I feel like sort of the mind has an impact. It leaves a sort of imprint on the body, right? So if you're suffering with any mental health disorder, that does sort of translate into some effect on your physical function as well. And so we have done some really exciting studies in this context where we have looked at individuals with schizophrenia
Mm,
uh,
mm,
and seen that in general, compared to a healthy population or a population that doesn't have schizophrenia, they have increased inflammation and cardiovascular aging, which seem to be sort of typical markers, at least from the whole body perspective. What's really interesting is we've also looked at it in people with PTSD coming back from Afghanistan, and
interesting.
seen that very specific trends with, again, inflammation and metabolic and cardiovascular aging acceleration in these individuals. And what's interesting to me is the fact that you can really start seeing these trends really quickly. It's not like you're waiting 20 years for these trends. You're seeing that within someone who has experienced PTSD in a military war zone over a span of 6 months is
Mhm.
really having an impact a month later. In these systems. And that to me is quite exciting. The fact that we are able to capture these changes so quickly at a physical level, clearly where a manifestation has happened in sort of your mental health, is really exciting.
I think it's fascinating, because PTSD can be, an outcome that really would benefit from physiologic signatures.
Yeah,
It's not just in your head,
yeah,
there's an actual signature, there's a biological imprint
yeah.
that can show that, and maybe there are even different flavors of stress,
Hmm.
the burden of stress, so-called allostatic burden,
Yeah,
that could be teased out in some of these cluster analyses.
yeah.
It's just phenomenal work, Raghav. Just
Monty, thank
phenomenal work. So much promise, I think, in this field. Maybe we should bring this to the sort of closure with two thoughts that I'd like to ask you to sort of expand on. One is, do you think that industry and academia collaborations will advance some of this research? Is there real opportunity there? And I ask that in part because, there's this Longevity Biotech that's coming up, and
Yeah,
there's a lot more interest now with funding, uh, you know, um, the funding climate. There's a lot more interest in finding new ways of building partnerships across industries and academia, biotech, pharma.
yeah.
So, what are your thoughts about the future landscape for those sorts of collaborative efforts?
Yeah, I think now more than ever is the time where industry can really step in to translate some of these sciences into clinic
Mm,
and into practice. Uh, Given the funding landscape, I think it's really up to sort of the private sector to, in some ways, come and fill in that gap to translate some of these sciences. Because in some ways, for the longest period of time, I believe that it was public money that was funding some of these initial research, and then sort of picked up when it's at a functional stage by industry.
yeah.
But I think now, given the current climate of things in the sciences, I think it'd be amazing if industry can really step up and pull their boots and fund a little more of our sciences here, which is why sort of the industry academic collaboration right now becomes even more critical than
Mhm.
ever, I believe.
Maybe industry funded fellowships,
Yes,
uh,
absolutely.
things like that that bring back, and there could be an agreement where they spend some time and the company come back.
Yeah.
Phenomenal opportunities going forward. So I think this is maybe a good place to sort of wrap it up. Raghav, congratulations.
Thank you.
Your work is phenomenal. There's a lot of promise there. We'll keep an eye out. Advanced Science, Advanced Portfolio, and
Thank
Aging
you,
Cell
Monty.
are all very interested in keeping track. And yeah,
Thank you, Monty. This was amazing. Thank you.
excellent. Okay.